Social anxiety is a term that you're probably well familiar with. But what exactly do we mean by social anxiety and how exactly do we treat it? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at on this week's episode of GetPsyched. Hey guys, welcome back to GetPsyched. We've had about a month off. I've been doing a lot of university work, I've been doing a lot of work of my own, and I've been attending an international conference with CRITICISED in the Philippines. So we've had a little bit of a break from GetPsyched, but it's really great to be back. In the coming weeks, I'm going to be doing a short video about some of my experiences speaking at my first international conference with CRITICISED in the Philippines. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the opportunities that have come from that, how even you can think about getting on the network of speaking at a conference. And I'm also going to be looking at a little bit of the topic on which I looked at, which was men's mental health. But for now, I've actually written a guest blog post on my website, frasersmithcounselingsci.com, about my topic, about what I looked at this international conference, and about the conference in general. So make sure to check that out if you've got the time. But like I said, for now, we're going to be looking at social anxiety and how best to treat social anxiety. So it's a good place probably to start off by understanding a little bit about what exactly social anxiety is. Well, primarily, social anxiety stems from a fear of being judged by others. And put in a broader sense, it's maybe about people who feel they are being judged in a negative light by others. And as a result, social anxiety can create feelings of inadequacy or inferiority. And often you'll understand social anxiety in other people when people perform differently or behave differently in larger social groups than they do when they're on their own. When they're in these larger social groups, that sense of social anxiety and the things that come from social anxiety present themselves more so than when that person is on their own. So what exactly creates that feeling of social anxiety? Well, for example, being introduced to new people can often spark those insecure feelings that social anxiety can bring. Being the centre of attention can also have that impact. Or being in any way criticised. Perhaps you've experienced this when you've been criticised at work or in studies. That sense of social anxiety and that overwhelming sense of inferiority can result from being criticised. Social anxiety can also come from meeting authority figures. In any sense, social anxiety can present itself in different situations for different people. But primarily, social anxiety results in that group setting or when we're introduced to new settings altogether. So let's take a little bit of a look at the extent of social anxiety. Social anxiety is actually a bigger issue than was previously understood years ago. Termed now as social anxiety disorder, which was called social phobia, it's the third biggest psychological disorder diagnosed in the world today. A total of 7% of the population suffer from social anxiety to some extent. And I think that's probably the sense with social anxiety disorder. Largely, social anxiety can be experienced by everybody to an extent. I know I feel social anxiety in certain circumstances. So to say that only 7% of the population suffer from it, I really don't think does that justice to the extent of social anxiety. It's true to say that millions every year across the world suffer from social anxiety. However, social anxiety itself is quite a broad term. There's actually different categories of social anxieties and different extents that social anxiety is experienced by different people. There's what's known as a specific form of social anxiety. And this is where people might feel anxious when they're speaking in groups or in front of large crowds. And there's also what's known as generalized social anxiety. And this is when people are just generally socially anxious in any group setting, in any extensive group of new individuals or people that they already know. When they feel that sense of social anxiety, we call that generalized social anxiety. So we've had a little bit of a background as to what exactly social anxiety is, the different forms of anxiety or social anxiety, and how it's experienced by different people. But what does the research tell us about how best to treat our social anxiety? I think the first thing to say here is that people with social anxiety know that they have it, and what I mean by this is that people who are socially anxious know that it's there, and that makes it a little bit different from other psychological disorders. If you talk to somebody with social anxiety and their fear of being in a large group setting, they're probably very well aware of it. And that, as a result, changes the way in which it should be treated, or how it's effectively treated rather. The first thing that we should be aware of is that there is absolutely something we can do about extensive social anxiety that people feel. And the first thing, and I'm not trying to be too biased as a trainee counselling psychologist, therapy, and primarily cognitive behavioural therapy, can actually be really, really impactful. CBT has been studied to show profound implications for people that suffer from debilitating social anxiety. Now, the Social Anxiety Institute call their CBT treatment comprehensive cognitive behavioural therapy. And they say this in order to avoid the thought that there's just one technique from CBT that should be utilised in order to treat social anxiety. They call it comprehensive cognitive behavioral therapy in order to show that they encapsulate numerous different techniques that are incorporated in CBT in order to treat social anxiety. Now, when I read this and I heard about this, I was a little bit unsure as to what exactly comprehensive cognitive behavioral therapy is. That to me just basically means cognitive behavioral therapy. Comprehensive CBT says that you incorporate numerous different techniques within CBT, but that is the case with most people entering therapy when they experience CBT. So I'm a little bit unsure exactly what the Social Anxiety Institute mean by comprehensive CBT. However, CBT itself can be really impactful for social anxiety disorder. And this form of therapy gives people an understanding and an experience of experiencing new thinking patterns, more positive thinking patterns, when it comes to social settings in order to get over their social anxiety. And as a result, hopefully the individual can start to see social settings for what they really are, rather than what is manifested in their mind and has led to this social anxiety. So for example, when you enter a new group or a new room full of new people that you've never known before, it's likely that all heads will turn to you and have a look. Now, if you suffer from extreme social anxiety, you might think that those heads are turning because you look different, or you look strange, or you shouldn't be there, or that you're out of place. When the reality of the situation is that probably people are just interested to know who you are. Cognitive behavioral therapy is very good at encapsulating these thinking processes and changing the way that we think about certain situations. And as a result, CBT can be really, really beneficial for those suffering from social anxiety. I remember when I was 15, I actually moved school. And it was an extremely nerve-wracking experience for me. When I entered the new school, of course everybody was looking to see who I was, and my social anxiety kind of ignited at that point. I thought, gosh, I look different, I'm not wearing the right thing, I'm not saying the right thing. And as a result, that sense of social anxiety really did increase. It wasn't until I realised that people just wanted to know who I was. They were interested to know who the new guy at school was. And that in turn reduced that sense of social anxiety. I understood the situation for what it really was, not for what I had manifested in my own mind. And this is the case with most social anxiety. We perceive a social situation to be something that it really isn't. As a result, our social anxiety increases. So changing our thought process, implementing more positive thought processes and thinking patterns can have a really profound impact for those suffering from social anxiety. So it's true to say that therapy, and primarily cognitive behavioral therapy, does work. What I would argue actually is that any form of therapy works. There's something in therapy called the dodo effect, which means that every approach to therapy has pretty much the same implication, the same positive implication for those that are undertaking it. Currently, I'm primarily trained in person-centered therapy, so I would advocate that anybody access any kind of form of therapy that's accredited in order to treat their social anxiety. The bottom line is that therapy works, but what can you do right now to help treat your own social anxiety? Well, the first thing to do is to understand your own issue with social anxiety. Maybe you have a problem with public speaking. Maybe you have a problem with answering questions in class or at work. Or maybe you have issues entering new rooms with new people. What's important here is to understand your own subjective experience of social anxiety, and as a result, you can learn to treat it that way. And also what I would say, as I've said earlier, is to try and understand social settings for what they really are. Okay guys, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of GetPsyched. It's great to be back. I hope you guys are enjoying the videos as always. Keep watching the videos, make sure to like, comment, share, and hopefully I'll catch you next week.